Hey everybody, welcome to the Mountain Gamer on this beautiful autumn day, and today I will be looking at a solo variant for the solo mode for Terraforming Mars that I came up with. Now if you've never heard of Terraforming Mars, well, is that even possible? Right? Okay. And yeah, love it or leave it, it's here to stay. And I got a chance to play it recently. I didn't think I was going to like it because I have a natural aversion to the Eurogames. But this one was okay. Didn't rock my world or anything, but I did have, some fun with it. And played with a friend, tried to get my wife to play it. She opened the box, she saw the ugly components, and she was like, life is too short to play this. Let's bust out the Runebound. So yeah, so I did not get to play it with her, but I played it with a friend, I played it solo, and I thought the solo mode was okay, but I found it lacking in a lot of respects. First of all is all the award system. That whole thing is gone. And between you and me, that's one of the most exciting parts of the game, I find. Like in the third act of the game when everything gets like, am I gonna get that award? Like I thought that was very exciting and interesting, and that's just not in the solo mode. And I don't really think you can fix that. Now if you go on BGG, some people have tried to do that, but it's very fiddly. You have to play around with cards and stuff and make the AI blah, 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 blah. It's too much. But anyway, one of the other things that I did not like about the true solo mode was the Mars part, like the map, right? Nothing happens on this thing. You just have free range over what you're doing. You're putting out these greenery tiles and these city tiles in a way that works really well for you, and it's always going to work out because nobody's messing up your plans, right? So I tried to fix that in a very simple way. That was my goal. Just like, roll a d6, look at a chart, do a thing. So yeah, I did that, and it works out fine, and I have fun with it. So let's get into it right now, and I'm going to show you how this thing plays. Alright, so here I have a game set up for a solo player. Now setup you will do as you would in any game of Terraforming Mars, with the base game, with Prelude also. As for the other expansions, I'm not too sure, honestly. I am kind of new to the world of Terraforming Mars, so for now I'm going to say this variant maybe only works with the base game and with Prelude, but here we go. Bear with me here. So you'll set up in the normal way, so this goes on 1, this goes on 14, in this case I'm blue, and then you would populate the map with 2 random cities and 2 random greenery tiles, and you know how to do this. You would flip a card, and then it would say 2, and that's pretty crappy. So 2, in this case, 1, 2, you can't go there, so you'd continue there. You'd put that city tile, and then you would get another card. It would say 8, so you'd go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can't, yes you can, greenery. So city and greenery. But in this case, I did this with random cards, and that's the general setup that I got kind of, stuck with. So keep that in mind because I'll be using that type of mechanism with the cards later on. So yeah, so set it up basically like you would any other game. And now let's fast forward, let's say a few turns into the game, and I'll show you how my variant kicks in.
Many hours later.
All right, so let's say we're further along in the game, the stats have moved and all that. Now what's going to happen is, whenever you take an action that would make your cube raise on the TR track and hit a gold space, okay? Whenever that happens, you would finish your action that prompted the move, but then you would roll a d8 and you would consult this chart. Now I know this seems like a lot, but believe me, it isn't, because I have actually synthesized everything on this tiny little card. It looks like gibberish, but believe me, once you've done this once, you'll always use this card. So what you're gonna do is, like I said, you'll roll a d8. Let's look at this really quickly here. So 1 and 2 is a protected natural landmark. Now what this means is you're gonna put some gold cubes on the map, and these spots will be unusable by anyone. It's like, your team or their team discovered some natural beauty or something, and you cannot terraform there. You can't build anything there, okay? That's what 1 and 2 will do. 3 and 4 is opponent builds a city. So randomly, you're gonna put like a new city that belongs to the red player on the map, always according to normal placement rules. If you do 5 or 6, it's opponent expands greenery. So this will simulate a player kind of growing his greenery from one of his greenery tiles, but it could go anywhere, and I'll show you how in a bit. And then 7 or 8 is basically, actually 7 is the opponent will steal a resource off of you, like you do with him. And number 8 is the opponent will take away some of your production. Now, if you don't like that, if you don't like getting stuff stolen from you, you can just play with a d6 and ignore the 7 and the 8, right? Because it's 8 choices, so if you roll just a d6, you don't have to deal with the opponent taking stuff from you. So how do these things work? It's actually pretty simple. It resembles in many ways what you do at the start of the game by checking a card and then counting tiles. But each of these has its own specific way. If we're talking about the protected natural landmark, you're going to flip a card, check the value, and then you'll count only your tiles, okay? In the number 1 here, number 1 protected natural landmark, you'll start from your topmost left tile, and you'll count going down and coming back if necessary. And in the number 2 version, it's the same thing, but just backwards, okay? So let's say we do this. Let's say we rolled a 1. So we'll go 14. So we'll spot our first hex. So our first hex is this one, and we'll count only our hexes for 14. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's the targeted hex. Then it says roll a d6, and you'll roll a d6 to kind of find a hex around this one where you can actually place that protected landmark. So 3. Now the way I do this is, let's take this tile for example. You always want to go around, okay? So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this applies here as well. So 3, so from this, which would be the center, you would go 1, 2, 3. And that's where you would put this protected landmark. Now, if ever you roll something that makes no sense, like a 5, let's say from here, you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's nothing here. So then you just continue around until you find something. So if I rolled a 5, this is where I would put that cube. Now, if you're ever in a situation where you can't put anything, I don't know, let's say this is the situation, and with the 14 you land on this hex, you're like, yeah, but there's nothing around, I can't do anything else. Well, then the instructions say, if you are unable to find a valid target hex, return to the initial tile you landed on, this one, before rolling the d6, then keep going rightward along the map until you hit any empty unreserved hex. So, if we're trying to put one of these things, empty unreserved hex, this one. You cannot put one of these things on the ocean, of course. So that's the natural landmark. So as I said, the number 1 option kind of goes from top to bottom, and the number 2 from bottom to top. The number 3 and 4 is opponent builds city. So again, this is pretty much the same thing as you would do in the setup of the game. You'd flip a card, so let's say 18. Then it says, check the value of the card, count that value rightward from the start of the map, counting every hex. So 18, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So right there, you would place an opponent city. Now, if you ever land on a spot where you can't do that, let's say, I don't know, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's say this was a 12, and that's the spot. Well, you can't put a city next to a city, you know that. So then you would just continue going right until you could. So in this case, here, if this was a 12, okay? So that's how the opponent builds city works. Now, number 3 is going to go from top to bottom, and number 4 is going to go from bottom to top. Number 5 is your opponent expands greenery from the top, and number 6 is opponent expands greenery from the bottom. So let's just do it here. So you flip a card, well, 2, okay, fine. It says here, count the value rightward from your opponent's top leftmost greenery tile and count only greenery tiles. So in this case, 2. Okay, his first one is this one, and his second one is this one. If it was a 7, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It'd be that one, okay? But now we got a 2, so 1, 2. And now from this landed hex, we'll roll a d6. And we'll try placing a greenery tile from this number here. So 1, 2, 3. Yes, it's doable. If you had rolled a 1, it's impossible, so you just go here. So in this case, your enemy or opponent just expanded his greenery. So again, number 5 is going to go from top to bottom, and number 6 from bottom to top. And the other ones are pretty simple. Number 7 is opponent uses your resources. So if the oxygen is below 8, you would roll a d6 and you would count those spaces on your player board. And what I mean by that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 types of resources. So in this case, let's actually look at this here. So let's pretend I've got a whole bunch of resources here. I would roll a die. It's a 2. So 1, 2, we're talking about steal, and then it says lose 2 of that resources. So if you had any, you would lose 2. If you cannot comply, lose $3. If you cannot lose $3, lose 1 TR. Okay? And if the oxygen was 8 or above, you would do the same thing, but you would lose 4 of that resource. If you cannot comply, lose as many as you can, then lose $5. And if you cannot lose the $5, you lose 2 TR. So as the game progresses, it gets, worse and worse, basically. And the opponent sabotages your production, number 8. That works in very much the same way. So you would check where the oxygen level is. Let's say oxygen is below 8. You would roll your d6. We're talking about 6, which would be heat. So then it says lose 1 production of that resource. So you would try to do that. If you cannot comply, lose 3 resources of your choice. Mix and match. So you could lose one of that, one of that, one of that, as you wish. But you may not lose money. And then if you still cannot comply, like if you were unable to lose 3 resources in a mix and match situation, well then you will lose 1 TR. And if the oxygen is 8 or above, well then it says run the above sequence twice. So again, I'm just making it worse. Now, as I said before, if you don't like getting stuff stolen from you, that just happens on a 7 or an 8. So just don't play with that and roll a d6 and just apply the results for 1 to 6. So there you go, it's as easy as that. What I've found is it makes the map a little bit more interactive as the rounds go. And like I said, it's every time you hit a gold space. So essentially, like my solo games end around here. So it's gonna happen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 10 times in the game. If you wanna, make it a little bit tougher, you could also say that every time the generation marker hits a gold space, you also roll the D8. So essentially it would happen twice because you're playing up to 14. So you can do that. And as for the end game, what's gonna happen is you will score, okay, your opponent is not gonna score anything. You score normally. And once you've determined your score, whatever it is, let's say your score is 80 for some reason, you will check if your opponent has made some points off of your tiles. Like for some reason, if you spread out your tiles over here, okay, well then that would mean that after you've counted your points, you would check, well, the enemy made 1 point because he's got a city adjacent to one of my tiles. So you would lose a point for every point that the enemy made off of your tiles. Yeah, that's it. And as I said, I have made this little card here. Now it looks like I said, gibberish, but look at the first one here. You roll a 1, it's for a landmark. And these are all abbreviations. So you start on your hex, top left, go right, count your hexes only, roll a d6 for a landmark. There you go. Number 3, opponent city. Map top left, go right, count all hexes, put an opponent city, OC. It's pretty simple, I think, that I play with this exclusively now. I don't need the big list anymore. So there you have it, pretty simple stuff as you saw. Yeah, so, roll a d8, look at the chart, do a thing. And surprisingly, you'll have some games where it seems like that die really has it in for you. Like you'll be like, I really want to put a city tile there, and then you'll roll the die and boom, protected landmark. And you're like, yeah, the beauty of nature. Damn you, So yeah, sometimes it works out and makes the board a little bit more dynamic. And like I said, if you don't like those 2 last ones on the D8 chart, that 7 and 8 that kind of steals resources off you, if you don't like that, just play with a D6, just, ignore those last 2 options. So there you go, print it out, give it a try, let me know if you do try it, let me know if you modify it in any way, I'd like to know about these things. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe and all that YouTube boring jazz. But before I go, let me just show you how beautiful today is. It's just ridiculous. I mean, just, come on. How can you not love this? It's just awesome. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button down below. Now, I know it seems like a very small thing to do, but it actually does help the channel when you do that. And if ever you should find yourself in a super generous mood, well, I do accept donations via PayPal. And anything you give, big or small, will help keep me going.